Tonight on KPBS Evening Edition, eliminating parking requirements to make way for new affordable housing developments. City Council votes to approve the proposal. Where the plan goes from here. Plus, Democratic lawmakers push to declare a climate emergency for California. Why they believe the state is threatened. And another series of storms is heading to San Diego. When we can expect sunshine to return. KPBS Evening Edition starts right now. Good evening. It's Monday, March 4th. Thanks for joining us. I'm Susan Murphy. New apartment and condominium buildings can soon be built in San Diego with no off-street parking. KPBS Metro reporter Andrew Bowen explains the new rules approved today by the City Council.
The new rules apply only to new multi-family housing near major public transit stops. City staffers say the change will allow developers to build more housing and that most newly constructed homes will probably still have on-site parking in areas where demand is high. Developers will also be required to provide transportation amenities to residents, such as subsidized transit passes or bike storage. Mayor Kevin Faulconer says the change will help wean San Diegans off their dependence on cars and will make housing more affordable.
Each parking space adds $35,000 to $90,000 to the overall cost of building a housing unit, with underground parking being the most expensive. Those costs are then passed on to renters and buyers, making units less affordable for San Diego's working families, which of course are the lifeblood of our economy.
The reform also requires landlords to charge tenants separately to rent a parking spot. That's intended to give a discount to renters who choose to live without a car. Andrew Bowen, KPBS News.
Thanks, Andrew. State lawmakers could be voting on a resolution this week that would declare California to be under a state of climate emergency. Under the resolution, lawmakers would announce their intention to make all transportation in California carbon neutral by the year 2030. Lawmakers behind the campaign say they want all vehicles in the state to be burning clean energy with a complete ban on oil and gas production in California. They say it can be done by redirecting $100 billion of state resources over the next 12 years to greenhouse gas reduction programs. Critics call the resolution unnecessary and a fear tactic stunt, but those behind the resolution say it's more than possible.
They'll tell you that we can't afford to take these steps to a carbon neutral California or to a 100% clean energy fueled grid or to a transportation fleet that's zero emission. We can't afford not to make those changes.
Last year, Governor Brown approved a bill that will require California to have a carbon-neutral electricity grid by the year 2045. San Diego has gotten nearly 11 inches of rain since October 1st. All of the rain we've received in San Diego County inspired one of our audience members to send us a couple of questions. He wants to know about where all this rain is doing for our water supply. KPBS Midday Edition host Jade Hindman checks in with a watershed manager at the San Vicente Reservoir.
We are out here at the San Vicente Reservoir in Lakeside, and I'm here with Jeff Pasick. He is the watershed manager with the San Diego Public Utilities Department. Thanks for joining us.
You're welcome.
Okay, so first question, how has all of this rainfall impacted the reservoir?
Well, the city of San Diego has 9 reservoirs. Most of those reservoirs are not in the city of San Diego, they're in the backcountry, and they collect rainfall runoff. We have gained a significant amount of water with the rainfall that's happened locally. We've gained, the technical term is acre feet. We've gained 40,000 acre feet of water, and that's enough water. 1 acre foot is enough water to supply 2 families for a year.
And, this reservoir was somewhat recently expanded. Tell me about that.
Right. Well, San Vicente Reservoir was first constructed, the dam was first constructed in the 1940s. But then just recently, maybe I think it was in 2015, we completed a raising of the dam that increased the size of the reservoir dramatically. So it about tripled the size of the reservoir. And
so how does the water here in this reservoir, for example, get to our faucets?
From San Vicente, there are pipelines that carry the water to the Alvarado water treatment plant, which is at Lake Murray in La Mesa. At the Alvarado Water Treatment Plant, the water is treated, filtered, and disinfected, and then by pipelines, the water is carried to homes and businesses and those faucets you ask about.
All right. And so the water is treated through a process?
Yes.
What does that include?
Gosh, well, so it's a multi-step process. It involves adding some chemicals that cause particles to clump together, allowing those particles to settle out. Then the water is filtered through sand filters, and then chlorine is added to disinfect the water to take care of any pathogens that might be in the water.
Okay, and so I see that there are boats out here.
Yes, there are.
So there's recreation that happens on this water. Tell me about all the activities that happen.
Well, here at San Vicente, we have recreational boating that includes both boating for fishing and also for water skiing and wakeboarding. And some folks just bring their boat out just to boat. That happens only some of the days of the week, and of course it's more popular during certain times of the year than other. We also have a picnic area here, and folks fish from the shoreline as well.
And it's awfully quiet here now, but there is some aquatic life outside of the fish that live on this reservoir as well, right?
Sure.
Tell me about that.
Well, you know, our reservoirs are also really good habitat for birds and fish and other plants and animals. You just heard a coot, that little peep sound. They're a pretty common water bird. So sure, the reservoirs are really valued for their habitats for animals and plants.
And so are there any rules in terms of the recreation that happens out here so that it doesn't impact the water quality?
Sure there are. So first of all, the human contact, the people contact with the water is closely controlled. So we don't allow swimming, for example. While we do allow wakeboarding and water skiing, then the people might be in contact, of course would be in contact with the water. We don't allow outright swimming. We don't have swimming beaches. The boats that are operated here all have to be a certain kind of outboard motor called a 4-stroke motor, which is less polluting. And boats are only allowed daylight hours in certain days of the year. There's a lot of other rules that go behind that as well.
How does all this recent rainfall impact the consumer?
Right. We operate our reservoirs to capture runoff when it's available, and then we use that water over a longer period of time. So so the immediate capture of runoff and filling of reservoirs doesn't mean that there's an immediate relief of water supply issues, because we spread that water out over time to take best advantage of the water that we capture.
All right. Hey, I sure appreciate you taking time to talk to us.
You're very welcome.
Answering those questions. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
You can hear more from this interview on the Midday Edition podcast. Meanwhile, more wet weather is on the way. This last weekend, we saw just one of multiple storm systems expected to roll through San Diego. Meteorologist Melissa Constanzer has our full forecast.
Good evening. Hopefully you had a great start to the work week. Things are changing for us, though, as we go through the work week. Tomorrow, we'll add some showers through the late afternoon hours, and then guess what? There's more rain into Wednesday. And while we will keep things unsettled through the late week and into the weekend, probably the bigger change that you'll notice is it gets cooler. So that's one of the stories that we have out there. Next storm system working into the California coast here. You can see it wrapping up offshore. Then all this moisture will be pushing in. Most of the storm takes aim to our north. However, we will be getting some showers. Not tonight, though. 51 for that low. A couple clouds out there. No big problems. As we head around the area, you'll notice temperatures largely in the 40s or upper 30s. 44 for Oceanside for your low. A couple of clouds. Heading into Mount Laguna, we're coming in with 40 for that low. As we work our way, though, into tomorrow, our story again begins to change, because this storm system that I showed you on the satellite is working its way ashore, and that is going to mean some very heavy rain. Most of the rain targeted on the south side of the storm system, so it's going to be through central California to about Point Conception. I think the heaviest rain stays north of the Los Angeles area. There, they could see a few inches of rain. For us, that's not the case. A couple showers again working in late through the afternoon. Oceanside coming in at 65. And as you can see, Chula Vista, it'll be later in the day even for you. Temperatures in the mid-60s. Your forecast through the next couple of hours. No big problems through most of your Tuesday. But head into Tuesday afternoon, so tomorrow afternoon before you get home, maybe a few stray showers. Then we head into Wednesday morning. And here comes even some more rain. Wednesday is the wetter day for us. I think we could pick up a quarter to a half inch of rain. It's not a washout, but again, we've had a lot of rain, so there could be a few spots that get a little bit stuck up with some areas of puddling and ponding. Colder air works in for the late week, and that will be one of those stories that you'll notice the change. For the coast here, we're talking about temperatures in the 60s with that wet weather, and then we drop to the 50s by Friday. Notice the showers sticking around off and on through the inland locations for the next few days. We'll make it to the 50s for Friday. Mountain areas, we're going to see that cooler weather really work in, and again, Friday, 30s for your highs. Deserts will be largely quiet. However, those numbers go from the 80s to the mid-60s. For KPBS, I'm meteorologist Melissa Constanzer. Back to you.
People are living longer compared to decades ago. That fact has spawned a trend: senior citizens taking care of their very elderly parents. As part of our statewide collaboration covering the California Dream, KPBS's Amitha Sharma spoke to two sisters in their late 60s who share care of their 100-year-old mom.
It's 3 p.m. on a windy February day in San Diego, and 100-year-old Ginny Davenport, with her smiling eyes and flawless manicure, is excited about the evening ahead.
I hope about 5 o'clock, before the girls leave, that we'll sit down and have a vermouth. That's terrible, isn't it?
The girls, as Ginny calls them, are her daughters. They're 69-year-old Kelly and 67-year-old Riley. Both sisters are married and retired. They both have children. Kelly has a grandchild. And both have taken responsibility for Ginny, as they call her, after their father's recent death. Here's Riley.
We basically share her. And so 2 weeks at my house and 2 weeks here at my sister's house. And that is really for both of us. I think it helps us not get responsibility fatigue, if you will.
At a time in life when 60 or 70-year-old something seniors anticipate retirement and maybe some downtime, some are becoming caregivers and guardians of their parents. No stats exist on how widespread this is, but the trend is expected to intensify.
People are living longer.
University of Southern California gerontology professor Donna Benton says caregiving by younger seniors amid their own aging process has its costs.
For family caregivers, almost 50% report some type of strain or symptoms of depression.
Riley Davenport says for her family, resources and planning are key.
We do have caregivers during the day so that I can work or play or do whatever I am going to do.
The professional caregivers help Ginny out of bed and bathe her. They take her to doctor's appointments, track her medications. Ginny's older daughter, Kelly, says the sisters considered moving their mom to a senior community.
Neither of us can imagine that it would be the best thing for her and for us, really.
Taking turns with their mom, they learn more about her every day. They recently came across a letter Ginny's first husband, not their father, wrote during World War II.
Saying, you know, we're going to go on this bombing mission tomorrow. I don't expect to make it home alive, so you go ahead and have a good life. Marry and have kids like we talked about. It won't be with me, but I'm sure you'll find a good man. Well, that's just very moving.
Today, Ginny reads novels about that era. There's the romance about a time-traveling World War II nurse.
I'm rereading the Outlander because I like it.
She watches television.
I do like the Golden Girls.
She talks with her daughters about her life and their lives.
I can't think of anything we haven't really shared.
All three women paint. Art adorns the walls of Kelly's house. On this day, mother and daughters look at the paintings they've done over the years.
That's one of my favorites.
They're all one of your favorites.
That's
They're
so
like
true.
your children.
Yeah, they are my children.
Gerontologist Benton says the Davenport story is atypical when it comes to seniors caring for their elderly parents. Too often, families don't have the relationships or resources or health to age together so gracefully. But when they do, it's ideal.
And it does allow for everyone to grow throughout their lifetime.
Ginny says living with her daughters couldn't be more comfortable.
They're part of me, part of me, and I think we all sort of see things the same way. You know, it's like having grown up with them, and I'm still growing up with them. That doesn't sound right, but that's what it's like.
Amita Sharma, KPBS News.
This story is part of our statewide California Dream collaboration. California is taking the Trump administration to court once again, this time over a new rule limiting access to abortion services. State Attorney General Javier Becerra announced his 47th lawsuit against the federal government today in Sacramento. The legal challenge takes on President Trump's new Title X family planning rule. The regulation prohibits taxpayer-funded family planning clinics like Planned Parenthood from providing abortion services or referrals to abortions. The lawsuit argues the new rule is harmful because it undermines standards of care. According to Becerra, the regulation prevents doctors from informing patients of all their medical options, including abortion.
This is a systematic effort by this administration to end access to birth control and safe, legal abortion. The rule will interfere with the practice of medicine and will result in clinics going out of business due to financial strain. Medical care should be between a woman and her doctor, not the president or the vice president of the United States.
Becerra was joined by members of the Legislative Women's Caucus today, as well as California First partner Jennifer Siebel Newsom. According to Becerra, more than 1 million women in California rely on Title X for health care services. Antibiotic-resistant infections are becoming a global emergency. It happens when bacteria change in response to the medicine. As Krista Faria from the Associated Press reports, scientists are now racing to find alternative treatments.
Ella Balasa has a serious lung infection, and antibiotics have quit working.
It's just really gotten worse, and now I'm needing oxygen all the time. I've been on IV antibiotics for now 4 weeks, and I just feel as sick as when it started.
The 26-year-old has cystic fibrosis, which causes thick mucus in her airways that has trapped dangerous bacteria. Desperate for relief, Balasa recently started a dramatic experiment, using one germ to fight another germ, in this case, inhaling a virus to attack her superbug. With antibiotic-resistant infections becoming a global emergency, scientists are racing to find alternatives.
All indicators seem to point to the fact that this is going to get worse and worse. There are some subpopulations of people, some demographic groups, for which this is a particularly serious issue.
Phage therapy is one of the alternatives being looked at closely. It's been around for a century, but got pushed aside when the easier-to-use antibiotics came along.
The discovery of a super penicillin.
It uses viruses called bacteriophages to infect and break down specific bacteria. Biologist Benjamin Chan of Yale University has been traveling the world collecting phages from places like ditches, ponds, and even sewage treatment plants.
The best places are often really dirty places because we're dirty animals, and so like the sewage is great.
Because each phage only recognizes certain bacteria, it shouldn't kill off the good bugs in the digestive tract like antibiotics do.
We're not like burning the whole population, we're just finding the bad ones ideally and killing those.
There is still little known about the efficacy of phages, and formal studies are just being planned to try to prove their value.
There's an incredible opportunity here. But with that, you have to have the appropriate amount of skepticism and rigorous science.
Balasa recently became Yale's 8th phage therapy patient. She's now completed 2 rounds of treatment, inhaling billions of phages over several days.
I really hope that it can help get my infection under control. to a point where I won't need even any sort of antibiotics for maybe a couple of months stretch. That would be amazing.
Early tests suggest phages killed much of Balassa's predominant infection and made the survivor susceptible to antibiotics again. Balassa says the true test will be how long she can go without using any antibiotics. Krista Fourier, Associated Press.
Antibiotic resistance occurs naturally, but misuse of antibiotics in humans and animals is accelerating the process. Peep into any hospital's premature baby unit and you'll see tiny newborns covered in wired monitors. But the life-saving equipment blocks parents from cuddling their babies and can tear at fragile skin. Now, U.S. researchers have created tiny skin-like wireless sensors that may finally cut those cords.
We've had the opportunity to evaluate almost 90 babies now, keeping on the wired devices side by side with our wireless devices, and the accuracy is terrific.
Nearly 300,000 U.S. newborns wind up in neonatal intensive care units each year because they were born prematurely or with serious health problems. It's crucially important to track their heartbeat, breathing, and other vital signs so health providers can spot any problems. That means sticky electrodes tethered by wires to a variety of beeping monitors that surround the incubator. The nest of wires impedes skin-to-skin contact with a parent. Dr. Amy Poller, a Northwestern pediatric dermatologist, says that can prevent premature babies from thriving and makes it harder to breastfeed.
If you've ever walked into a neonatal intensive care unit, what you'll notice first is that mass of wires that surrounds the babies. And if they're very small babies, that mass can be greater than the size of the baby. And that means a problem. First of all, you can think about the poor babies. They're tethered to a bed. They can barely move. But for healthcare personnel, the doctor, for example, has to get through those wires to be able to evaluate the baby. The nurse has to deal with the wires to be able to turn the baby or to change the diaper. And for parents, it's a huge dilemma because that mass of wires creates a barrier between themselves and the baby. They can stand there, but they're so worried about disrupting all of these wires that are so important in monitoring the baby.
And no matter how carefully doctors and nurses remove the electrodes, the youngest babies, whose skin isn't fully developed, are prone to scarring. Now, researchers have developed ultra-thin sensors made of flexible silicone that moves like skin and clings without needing any strong adhesive. To keep them lightweight, they don't need batteries either. Under the crib mattress sits a transmitter that keeps the sensors charged wirelessly while simultaneously receiving all the sensors' measurements. Replacing today's standard monitoring takes just two sensors, one made for the chest and one to wrap around a foot, that work together. For example, the chest sensor measures heartbeat as the chest contracts, while the foot sensor records blood pressure, negating the need for a bruising blood pressure cuff. John Rogers, a Northwestern University bioengineer, says they work just as well.
The goal was to show that these devices could operate in a completely non-invasive way, simultaneously on babies that were being monitored in the conventional manner, so that we have two separate streams of data, conventional data and data coming off of these new skin-like devices, so we can do a precise quantitative comparison to validate the precision and the accuracy and the reliability of these sensors compared to the clinical standard being used today.
The studies are continuing, and the sensors have now been used on about 80 babies with similar results and no sign of skin trouble. Theodora Flores is the mother of premature twins. She says she's delighted with the results.
It just makes it so much easier not having to deal with wires and trying to make sure I don't pull anything and hurt her.
With funding from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and Save the Children, Rogers is preparing for a pilot trial of the wireless sensors in Zambia in April, with the goal of testing up to 20,000 sensors in India, Pakistan, and Zambia by the end of the year. It's estimated the new sensors could be made for about $10 to $15 each.
I'm William Brangham. Tonight on the NewsHour, tornadoes carve a path of destruction through the southeast, claiming over 20 lives. Coming up at 7, right after Evening Edition on KPBS.
Now for a recap of today's top stories. New apartment and condominium buildings can soon be built in San Diego with no off-street parking. City Council voted today to approve the proposal, which would eliminate some parking restrictions to make way for affordable housing developments. State lawmakers could be voting on a resolution this week that would declare California to be under a state of climate emergency. Under the resolution, lawmakers would announce their intention to make all transportation in California carbon neutral by the year 2030. And more wet weather is on the way to San Diego. Expect to see showers on and off in the county throughout the week and into the weekend. Wednesday will be one of the wettest days. Temperatures should be in the 60s through the week, but can dip into the 50s by Friday. Here's a look at what we're working on for tomorrow in the KPBS newsroom. On Morning Edition, as states along the Colorado River move ever closer to a plan to boost Lake Mead, the federal project that's moving forward just in case they don't make a key deadline. And on Midday Edition, a new model for chronic illness, the memoir that could help change the way we look at the final months of life. That's tomorrow on KPBS Radio. You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thank you for joining us. Have a great evening.